This is the Mind Body Detox Podcast, where we discuss all things integrative health and wellness, interviewing folks from all over the world, sharing insights and wisdom for how to live a healthier life in mind, body, and spirit. Welcome back, everyone, to the Mind Body Detox Podcast. I'm your host, holistic psychic medium, Kara Lovehart, and we are the sponsors this year for the 23rd annual New Visions Holistic Expo. So we're excited to bring you another pre-event special guest live stream. And of course, if you're not watching the live stream, you're watching the recording, we encourage you to still engage and comment with us. And we are introducing today one of our former guests on the show, Star Hansen. So Star Hansen is a clutter whisperer, certified professional organizer, and TEDx speaker featured on HDTV, OWN, and Oprah.com. And with over 20 years experience, Star helps people uncover emotional and energetic roots of clutter. So this is the energetic roots, not just let's clean up your clutter and make it look amazing, but we're looking at the energetic components. And this is how she helps transform spaces. So we're talking about clutter as a portal today, specifically how spaces we live in reflect our consciousness and they reshape who we are. So we're talking about the pre-event series for the event. We're actually bringing in this new paradigm, these visionary leaders that are talking about how they view the world and how their systems that they work in their own field support this new earth, this new paradigm we're living in. And specifically, we wanted to bring Star on today so we could talk about this intersection between our consciousness and our spaces and how they reflect each other and what we can do to shift our spaces around us. So let's bring on Star to the show.
Hello, so happy to be back with you.
Oh my gosh, yes, I was so looking forward to this. I'm incredibly honored to have you back. But I really let's start off with general. Let's share a little bit about your background as a clutter whisperer and what does that actually look like for people who maybe didn't listen to our last episode with you.
Absolutely. So I started my business over 20 years ago as a professional organizer, and I realized really quickly that there's so much more going on in people's clutter than just their physical stuff. There is trauma, there's emotions, there's so many layers to our stuff because the people that I work with are amazing. They're these incredible, badass, successful people, and they just struggle with clutter. And I kept seeing this pattern and I was like, what is going on? And the more that I tapped into this, and I'm naturally intuitive myself, as I know you are as well. And, once I allowed myself to tap into clutter as more than just physical mess, all this information started coming through. And I always, joke with people, I can tell you the state of your life by the state of your house. And it's never what you think it is. It's never that you're a hot mess. It's never that, you've got some issue that you're not going to be able to get over. Your space is talking to you and your clutter is talking to you. And more importantly, we are talking to ourselves through our clutter and through our homes. And once we can start to see with that lens, the whole world opens up because we stop beating ourselves up and we start using it for information.
Yeah. And I think that when you're seeing this reflection of someone's consciousness where maybe they're blocked in their life, they're having some unresolved things, like you said, trauma or things that are just challenging for them. What are the things that you've seen that are maybe some common examples that maybe our audience could relate to that you see as a common pattern for people?
One of the easiest and most benign options is reminders, right? We use it as a communication to ourselves. You leave the weights out in the living room to remind you to work out, the keys on top of your food in the fridge to remind you to take it with you to work. It's those little things. You might leave something out for your kids or your partner to remind them to do something they still haven't done, even though you asked a week ago. There's little subtle ways that we do that, but we also try to remind ourselves who we want to be in the future, the things that have happened in our past. We might use clutter in many different ways. I see it a lot with security and safety. I had a client who had a break-in at their house and had a lot of really important documents stolen. And at that point, the home office felt very dangerous to be organized. He needed that clutter to feel safe. And it wasn't until we started to see that he was using it as a security blanket that we were able to actually make changes, give him options for security and stability that didn't include the clutter. But I've seen this, you see this a lot with people who, went through the Depression My great grandma, for example, she had an overflowing pantry because at a certain time in life, she did not have enough. She couldn't feed her children. She couldn't feed herself. And that trauma made her want to hoard on to items that made her feel safe. And there was nothing wrong with that. It's what she needed. I've seen clients do this over the years if they grew up in, an impoverished situation, and then they felt like they needed to kind of switch the other direction when they were older. And, one of my clients had hundreds of pairs of jeans because she had no jeans growing up. And, and what I think is so precious about this work and so sacred about this work is that the world of clutter is so quick to be judged. People have judgment about themselves, each other. Oh, how can someone have that? Oh my gosh, oh, it's appalling. I could never. Well, you don't know that you can never. This is humanity. This is people really their vulnerabilities being let loose in their home space, which should really be a sacred place. And for some people, it's also not a sacred place. And so sometimes the clutter in a home protects us from maybe toxic people that we have to live with or circumstances we're not able to confront yet, like the loss of a loved one. So clutter is doing a lot of heavy lifting for us when it comes to our emotional side of things, as well as frequently our spiritual side of things.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that no matter if you're someone that you come into someone's house and maybe it looks pristine, right? It looks amazing. I'm sure that there's drawers or places that they do have the things that they are, challenged within their journey, because I think that's where some of us compare and contrast, go into a place oh my gosh, this looks incredible. But I always say is that, everything is energy, and you believe the same, right? We're kind of observing these patterns in, either our clients and you with working with their homes and their spaces. But I see that even if there is something that isn't addressed, it comes up in behaviors and patterns and habits if it doesn't come up in the home. It could be hypervigilance and being super organized, but then there's other ways that it comes out in health or how we treat our bodies. And I think that's what's really amazing about this work, and how I'm so grateful you're so passionate about what you're doing, because I think it helps people understand how everything is a reflection of our consciousness. So I'd love to hear maybe briefly a little bit of idea as far as what you've seen change and shift, maybe since the pandemic working with clients. I'm really curious to see what happened, because I believe we've gone to this collective trauma and more people are really struggling and starting to have things come up in their life. There's a lot more loneliness. There's more pulling away and reclusive, nature into their homes and spaces because of this challenge we went through. So I'm curious what's going on from your perspective in your world for your work with that.
Yeah, there's definitely an uptick in hoarding behaviors for sure, because especially if you look at the tariffs right now, where there's so much fear and doom and gloom, will we have access to this? And a lot of my clients who've been collectors are collecting for security and safety. And so they want to make sure that if things, I live in California, people are always thinking about the next big one. And so am I safe? Is my community safe in case something big were to happen? So I've definitely seen that rise. And then you've seen people who don't have a lot of money right now. And so they're really needing to hold on to what they have. And there's a lot of instability there. But I also see a lot of beauty in what's happened since the pandemic as well, because I couldn't be as clear as I am about the deeper meaning of our clutter, before 2020 as I am today, because now people, this is just shorthand. This is just, they understand, people are here for it. They see it, they feel it, they know their clutter is doing something bigger for them and they want to find out what it is. And it's because we've all kind of been brought to our knees, and it makes us go to such a real and guttural place that we want solutions that are not just a pretty box or a different label system. We're looking for something profound and meaningful. And so for me, just the way people have opened up since the pandemic is beautiful, because they've gone to this much deeper place. And unfortunately, trauma, takes us there, and it can be, really painful to weather. And for a lot of people, it also becomes the things that cracks us up and opens us up to the next level of our journey.
Yeah. Yeah. So the bookstore, New Visions Books and Gifts, has been open since 1987. And it's the very nature of the bookstore is about consciousness, moving into understanding meditation, crystals, and all different types of spiritual walks of life that are in that store with different resources and books. And, since I've been a part of that bookstore for roughly 20 years now, it's really beautiful to see people trickle in and then just stumble upon, this is a place where I can explore myself. I'm going to explore these different things and come home to myself. And then as we started to see things ramping up and the pandemic, it was incredible how many people were then looking for a more self-directed spiritual path. and health path, health and wellness for their own physical, emotional, mental health and their spiritual health. And that's been really incredible to see this shift. And not that people are abandoning their religions or their philosophies, but they're encapsulating this more expansive perception of what life maybe is and how it can support them. And that's why this event was started in 2001 by the bookstore owners. This event has been like a homecoming of people coming to like an all-you-can-eat buffet of services and speakers, and of course pre-event live streams of people like you that are really passionate and curious and driven to stay motivated on their path to learn more, how they can take care of themselves and how everything is a reflection of their consciousness. And so I have my next question is, people who are new to this, new to exploring their spaces, what do you do with them for their first exploration into how your space is reflecting you? What is the exercise or a consultation look like? How do you get someone started in working with you and really starting to see the reflection in their spaces?
I let them tell me their story. We have so much shame and judgment about our clutter, and we feel like nobody wants to hold space for it, or that it makes them bad or wrong in some way. And so I just want to hear your story. I want to hear how this has gone for you. I want to hear what it means to you. The job of an organizer, really, we are the secret keeper. We are the, emotion holder. I want to hear about the, your first kiss, that you have a journal entry that you just found, the t-shirt that reminds you of your long lost loved one, whatever it is. I want to hear your stories. Your clutter is not a burden to me. And there is something really beautiful about when we feel like our clutter is not a burden. And when someone is truly interested in it, the shame starts to dissipate because we heal through connection. And so once that happens, once we're not trying to hide, we actually feel a lot more free to let things go. Because if I come and I just start taking things from you without your consent, you're going to, of course, start to protect. But if I show genuine interest and say, this is your journey in your timetable, whatever you need, suddenly you feel abundant. You feel abundant and safe. And it's like, oh, actually, this is not serving me. Okay, I can let that go. And it really is just, how do I show up in a loving way and hear your stories and hear your journey so that we can craft a path together into the new version of your life, your home, and your stuff. And that's one thing that I think is really changing post-pandemic too, Kara, is, people are not feeling as connected to the physical stuff as they used to. There's definitely a world where people are still very consumer driven, but also I think we're really acknowledging that it doesn't scratch the itch. And in fact, it's here hurting us. It's hurting our planet. It's causing distress. And so we're starting to look in different directions to have our needs met.
Yeah, that is so true. And I love the drive and the motivation back to connection to others. I think that's been what we've been foundationally part of our podcast, for our clinic here, and for the expo. So yeah, and I think that the interest for people after the pandemic in diving into themselves, when people have kind of been on this journey and maybe they're not just scratching the surface, but they're like, I've been deep diving in my own personal development work too, right? So I want to speak to those people too, because we have those incredible souls in our community too. And again, I feel like the spiritual path is it's not a linear journey. There's this hierarchical perception that people have, like, I'm becoming empowered and now I've gotten to this certain level. And I really just think I'm thinking more circular rhythms. And that's just the way I think. And I encourage people to think that way, because then there's always this comparison that keeps us in the shame spiraling and comparing, whether it's our spaces or our health or what we're doing. But for those who are on this journey, I'd love to maybe have you speak a little bit on how this work can support ancestral patterns or patterns that have been passed down to you that you saw maybe in your parents or grandparents, and how you've seen that shift with your clients, whether consciously or unconsciously, trying to shift a pattern that's been in their family history.
Well, we know, through science, right, that our trauma is not always our trauma, right? We have epigenetics. We know we're carrying the lineage of 3 generations at least. And so we know we are carrying, when I say so excitedly, that's science, because I think those of us in the spiritual woo-woo community, we're so used to being dismissed. Like, oh, you got a feeling about it. And it's like, no. This is not a feeling state. This is actual evidence that we are carrying the trauma from years past. So if your mother or grandmother was starving, you might have that desire to want to hoard resources to be safe. Like, that may not belong to you. It may be generational. And so by doing this work, by looking at clutter and organization as a healing journey, which is really the way that I view it, we shift the paradigm from getting organized to instead releasing these generational patterns. Some generational, clutter issues like are genetic, right? You've got hoarding disorder, has a genetic component. ADHD can have a genetic component. So there's a lot of things that, you want to learn how to work with your brain. You want to learn how to work with your brain and your body and what you uniquely need. I think of both of those as potential superpowers for people. And I know it has challenges, but also there's beauty in it too. And so when we're looking at that aspect of it, it's like, okay, how do you learn to make peace with yourself and embody yourself better, knowing that this is part of your genetic makeup? And then on the other part, it's, okay, how do we start to like really use the clutter in a way of development? Like, so when I'm working with people, we're looking at, okay, what's the nugget of truth in your clutter? I am almost every client that I work with, if we're looking at a giant pile of clutter, there is something in there that you don't want to deal with. That's really painful. And if we can get to that, most of the clutter that's in our piles is very, non-emotional, very basic clutter, not difficult to deal with, but it's acting in service to that one difficult thing or those 5 difficult things, because that nugget of pain is in there. And we use the more benign clutter to hide and cover the more painful clutter. And so if we can start to make peace with that, I had a client this week that we had a session that was literally all day for that like nugget of clutter pain. And when we were done, she was like a different person. She looked like 20 pounds lighter and could breathe. And she had been dragging this around with her for the better part of a decade, and felt really stressed to confront it, and felt like it was like, you should have seen her that morning. She was like, I don't want to do this. Let's go get a coffee. Are you sure you don't want to go home? It's like the whole thing. And who she was at the end of the day was drastically different, because she was willing to meet herself and look at that trauma and be willing to confront the part of her that is gone, and also the version of the woman she's stepping into. And it's just really a sacred journey to me to witness that.
Yeah, no, and just having that ability for you to hold space with people, because I think there is a fix it mentality that we have in our culture, that you have to fix it, just get it to go away. We need to fix these problem emotions or these problem things. And really it's calling for just to discharge and allow those emotions, allow those things to fully be witnessed, so that we can move through them and grow. And I think that's something we don't always talk about.
Yeah, I think that's really well said, Kara, because it is, you think of a temper tantrum child, they don't get louder if you tell them to shut up, or they do get louder if you tell them to shut up, right? Because they're like, you're not hearing me. And so the more that we can, could kind of put our arm around our clutter and say, I'm here with you and I want to hear what you have to say, or our arm around those difficult feelings, it really allows for space for the truth to come up. And the truth is never as scary as it seems. We all know the bad things that, sometimes we dissociate and we don't know, but most of the time we know what we're fighting with. And the more that we can stop pushing it away and start putting our arm around it and friending it, the sooner we get to the healed side of our journey.
Yeah. And that in itself is just an expression, I think, of an expanded state of consciousness, which is love and fully like accepting and allowing. And that's really, really hard to do.
Yeah.
And I think that it's funny. I feel like I accept and allow so many interesting pieces of myself. I'm very dynamic, that I'll allow my like little inner girl. She'll be like, I'm really mad today. And like, I'll just fully like let it happen.
Yeah.
And I think in the past, when I wasn't letting it happen, that's when my pattern was eating sugar or having these things that we would deal with the emotions, with pushing them down. And for my habit that's been passed down ancestrally from my family, growing up with a depression, also being farmers, was hoarding food. So and especially since my logic brain says, well, it's because my son and me are gluten-free. And when we find really good deals, we have to hold on to them, because it's hard to get gluten-free things because they're expensive. Right. But it was so much deeper than that. And it's like really cool now that I'm like, wow, I only go shopping like every once or twice a week. And I don't have like a huge amount of access anymore, where I'm like, did I even use that? That's gone bad now, because it was in the cupboard sitting for 8 months, whatever. So I think that the awareness and sitting with this piece that you offer, this acceptance, is really truly a gift that I really honor in you, that you're doing that for people.
Thank you.
Giving permission.
Yeah.
So I have a question for you as far as the nervous system regulation. So that's a big topic that people are talking about in the world right now. So how do our spaces impact our nervous system and our ability to evolve if our nervous system is dysregulated from our space?
So the big conversation around our clutter in our spaces is that clutter's bad and that it, spikes our cortisol, makes it hard to sleep, is detrimental to our food choices and our mental health. And yes, we have, scientific evidence proving all of that. And one of the studies that I like the most says that clutter is only a problem if it's a problem to you. And why I like that is because you see some people's brain, like those with hoarding disorder, clutter is not a problem to them. And many times they like their stuff. Like if you weren't judging it, if the state wasn't coming telling you to put your stuff away, you might want to keep it all because you think it's pretty, which is why hoarding disorder was removed from the DSM-5 as a subset of OCD, because OCD, it's like painful. Like when people do OCD behaviors, they're in pain. And hoarding disorder is like, just talk to someone with hoarding disorder about their stuff. Like they're so excited. They're so prepared. So there's really like, and why I name that is because when we're talking about how we are using clutter, sometimes clutter actually benefits us. It helps us feel safe, or it helps us feel empowered, or, stable or secure and abundant sometimes. And so sometimes we might need that. And that might be the quickest way to get that need met. And if it is, fantastic. For now, we just want to be looking at other ways to get that need met without the clutter. So you have options. It's not the only option. It's just one option. But I will say for sure, it can feel, if your space feels stressful to you, you can start shifting slightly by just being willing to say, can I reimagine a space in my home that feels great? You don't have to organize your whole home. You don't even have to get rid of stuff. You can just say, I'm going to turn this one chair into my meditation corner, and I'm going to face it against a wall, put a pretty painting on, and I'm not going to look at the back of the clutter in my living room. I don't want to see it. And I'm going to create a point of view for myself that is a sanctuary. And I will get to all that, but first I deserve to fill my cup. So you might choose something like that. When it really is, it's, the space you have to ask yourself what feels good about it and what feels bad about it. And we want to build on the highest version of the good and start to release the parts that feel bad. Like if you, for example, are feeling stressed because you're always tripping over clutter in your living room, instead of trying to do a giant purge where you clear everything out in a weekend, which can feel really impossible and is oftentimes, seemingly impossible for people, clear spaces, just clear pathways so that you don't do that anymore. Start to really name what you need and work slowly and in small doses that serve your greatest need. And that can be scary because a lot of us are not used to asking ourselves what we need and giving that to ourselves. So saying, okay, what's one thing about my clutter that I don't like? And then are there maybe 3 versions of how you might solve that without even having to do a whole project? It's like redoing your whole world. Or what's something that I love about it? And how do I do that in more meaningful, intentional ways? And again, we're getting in relationship with ourselves through our clutter. And so it's not about, I got to get rid of the stuff. It's how do I get these items to serve me better? How do I serve myself better by being intentional with my spaces?
Yeah. I really love this reciprocity with your space. It's seeing it, observing it, loving it, and then, of course, choosing, if you choose, to transform it or allowing it to be what it is. And I think that this relational way of being with not just ourselves, but with others, when you're kind of getting into someone's space, seeing what's going on, and then helping them hold space for themselves, that's like, to me, I don't think we give enough credit for that amount of work. In our culture, we are awarded for monetary types of things or how well we progressed in our professions. And I really think that working hard, trust me, I worked hard for years. Coming from that background, you have to work hard to be good enough as a farmer, right? Like that is to be loved by God. All these things that are kind of part of my programming that I deconditioned through. But there is this like awareness that I've had over the last couple of years of how much the value that's unspoken of this inner work that people do. In general, in consciousness and in their own personal development, but even working with you with this space stuff, this is really hard, incredible work. And I think it deserves more, like praise for it, I believe.
And we don't have good examples of a healthy version of this because it's boring to watch on television. Like when I've done over 30 TV shows and in the shows that I was allowed to sit and have a real process with people, the crew was always like in tears, so moved, but that never makes the cut. Because no one wants to watch a slow burn on TV for an hour. They want to watch the transformation. And one of the reasons why I don't do television anymore is because it's so painful to watch. You've got, the production company is serving the network and the sponsors, and they're very different than even the host is, right? Like as the host, I'm the organizer, but I don't actually get to organize. I have to host. So I'm being paid by them and I have to behave accordingly how they're asking me to do. And then you've got the client who needs their spaces fixed. And I make this parallel. It's very graphic and I'm sorry, but you would never try to lose weight with a machete. That would never be a sustainable thing to do. And there's a fantasy. I just had this conversation with a client yesterday. There's a fantasy about, oh my gosh, but someone could come in and they could do it in 3 days. And you would absolutely feel violated. There's no, it's very sure. Maybe 1 in a million people would love that experience. Almost everyone I know who's had that happen felt violated in a very significant way, even if it was your kitchen or your nightstand, because this is your private personal space. And so when we look at those shows or we see these big transformations online, they look so great and they're sensational, and they are not what is long and lasting. And for some people, it will help and it will get their head above water and it will get them where they need to be. But you will know if you're being called to do this really transformative work. And when I work with someone, I work with them for years. I rarely do a one and done. It's so infrequent that I will just do a one-off session with someone because I'm interested in a transformation. I'm interested in you never having to struggle with this again. And I believe that's possible for everyone that I work with, that they can really get to that place.
Yes. And there's not a lot of recaps on those shows of like what happens in 6 months, because if they're going back to the same patterns, there's nothing changed on the inside.
Well, and it's certain people, again, if they've done studies that show that someone with hoarding disorder, for example, if someone comes in and organizes for them, they'll reclutter everything they had plus 30%.
Yeah.
So you felt better in the short term, but because you felt unstable and insecure, you doubled down, right? Because the deeper cause wasn't really like taken care of. It wasn't really nurtured in the right way. And I think it's a really complicated thing to struggle with, especially when there's so much judgment about it. And what if it's okay to take the time it takes? We're talking about having these big feelings and making space for, your angry temper tantrum. The goal is not to hear her once and then be like, now you're all done. Bye-bye. She will probably come up over and over and over again for the entirety of your life. And the making peace is not one time and she's gone. It's making peace every time she shows up. Hi again. Hi, love. Oh, you're so angry today. Okay. Tell me everything. That's where true peace comes from, is not needing things to be different and just really allowing what is in a profound and loving way.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'd love to go, there's a couple more questions. And I think one question I'd love to maybe to offer for the audience is the book that we read for your book. We actually, for those of you who are not aware, the Spiritual State Book Club, we actually read Star's book, Why the F Am I Still Not Organized? And it was incredible. And then, of course, we had her on for a workshop that you can still get on the community and go through and watch all of her things. So I'll include that link as well, which is listening to the monsters in your closet. But in the book, you were giving some general ideas of what different areas of the home represent if someone is struggling with money or relationships. So could you give some basic examples of those so we can have some ideas of like, oh, wow, that generally may represent this area of my life. And if I have clutter there, this may be it having, stagnancy or what's going on there.
Absolutely. So I created a program during the pandemic called The Meaning of Stuff, and it literally is the deep dive for what does my clutter mean? Because I can talk to someone for 5 minutes and really get a good thread on what's happening, but it's again so intimidating to look at our own stuff. So I wanted like a very deep dig. But when you're looking at your spaces, there's some rules of thumb, but I will always say take it with a grain of salt because only you know what these spaces are for you. So the kitchen, for example, is often the space of nourishment and health. It's also a big communication hub. So it can be a big family-centered area, a partnership area as well. I had one person tell me that for them, it was a financial area because they didn't cook and they did their bookkeeping there. And then they had to eat all their meals out because they didn't cook. So it felt like the kitchen zone to them felt very expensive and very money oriented. When you're looking at the office, this can be your office. If you have a physical office, it can also just be the counter where you work or your desk at work. This is your financial abundance. It's your purpose. This is, where Like, are you lighting up in the best way for you? The living room is about connection. It's connection with your community, the outside world. The entry is probably my favorite. That's how you greet yourself home at the end of the day, right? It's like how you welcome yourself home. It's also if you're willing to welcome other people into your home, and it's also your launching pad for going out into the world. And so the space, this mudroom area, this entryway, this foyer that people often, it's a secondary thought for them. This is the most important thing. If you walk into your house and go, eh, like that's not a great way to come home. Who wants to experience that? And so doing things like decorating it or making it really beautiful, or having your needs intuitive. Think of it like a butler. Like when you're leaving for the day, what would you like your butler to hand you? That's what belongs in the entryway. And so it's these little things, like that's just a couple of examples, but it's, there's just these little ways that once we understand how it's helping us, then we can start setting ourselves up for success.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for those examples. And of course, if you guys have any questions, we may have time for questions today, pop them in the chat. My other question here, since we're talking about the evolution of us as humans becoming more self-aware, and that's really my definition of consciousness, like we expand our self-awareness. And then when we become more self-aware, a lot of times we start to become more aware of other people. It's kind of the progression from a very traumatized person has to take care of themselves. They have to think out for them, number one only. And that's a lot of times it happens for us. Or people become people pleasers and they fawn to make sure that they can stay out of traumatic experiences if they've had them. So we can go either way, but there's this progression that people start to become very much more self-aware of their needs, their emotions, and then observing others, and then observing the world around them, then their spaces, then the planet and animals and the land. I've had so many amazing people that have kind of had this awakening in themselves and then started getting back in touch with nature. It's one of the talks, actually, Ecological Awakening, that will happen at the expo this year. So what are your thoughts as far as the progression of consciousness unfolding? How do you perceive, what do you hope to see as people evolve their awareness, or expand it, I should say? How do you hope to see their relationship with their spaces evolve?
What I see in my work and what I hope for most is a deepening of trust with ourselves. Because, it seems like a good party trick, right? Star comes over, she diagnoses what my clutter is doing to help me and tells me where the clutter is and how that affects my life. But that's secondary. It's fun and it's interesting and it's cool. But to me, it's all clutter leads back to learning to have a better relationship with ourselves and a more healed relationship with ourselves. And that really involves us learning to trust ourselves. Because if you have a life of feeling like I'm not going to keep all this stuff. Oh no, I have to keep all this stuff. That's us breaking trust with ourselves. And we don't, engage our trust better when we beat ourselves up and we tell ourselves that we're doing it wrong. We do it gently in a kind way by being interested in what's really happening, asking our clutter and ourselves what we need. And so to me, it's really about coming home to ourselves in a way of learning to trust ourselves better, trust our voices better, and not looking outside for our truth, because our truth is really within the confines of our mind, our body, and our home.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Thank you so much. I hope that this talk has been enlightening for some of our listeners, and for those who follow you and are tuning back in, since we were really excited you're here today. Hopefully you just really have again expanded this awareness again to how interconnected it is. So we do have some door prizes, guys. So if you have not been aware, all of our live pre-event live streams and recordings, we are giving away incredible prizes from the special guests. And you can enter to win those at the newvisionsholisticexpo.com/giveaway-central. Is actually in the comments below. So we encourage you to enter to win any of the door prizes you want. So we'll pull them next week. But the door prize we're giving away today for Star is her program. And this is the meaning of stuff that she talked about. I'd love for you to share a little bit more about that program, what's involved. And it's a $197 value. So this is a great prize for you guys to enter to win if that's something that interests you. So Star, tell us a little bit about that prize.
Yeah, it's even more than 197, because this is a program that I still go live with. And once you're in the cohort, you get to go live with us when we go live. And it's really my most special, my most prized class that I love. Like, I've got a lot of classes, but this is my baby, because it goes into what are the different areas of your home and what do they mean? Tell me more about the clutter in your home and what is it doing for you? And then coming up with this strategy of like, okay, great. Really understanding like, what's happening behind the scenes. I mean, the book, Why the F Am I Still Not Organized, was really what came from this program, watching people and knowing that people needed it, and by the way, your listeners are welcome to another free copy of the book if they want it. If they go to starhansen.com/podcast, they can get that again if they like it or if they didn't get it the first time. But it really is, it's about diagnosing, like, okay, why is this clutter not going away? What does it mean specific to me? Not a generalized idea, but what does it mean specific to me? And also, like, how can I get these needs met in a more like direct, loving, impactful way so that I can get on living my life and not spend every minute worrying about my clutter or beating myself up or, spending all weekend trying to get a handle on it. So it's really, this is the deep dive into what your clutter is trying to do for you and how you can shift how it does it so that you can have more freedom and capacity in your own life.
I am feeling like everyone needs this. Everyone needs even just the awareness of it. And you actually have an audiobook too.
I do, yeah.
And you read the audiobook, which is always nice.
I did. I could have been an audiobook recorder. I loved that process.
Yeah.
Fun.
I love when the authors read the book. It just has such it's just really more in line with their energy and who they are and their essence. So I did include in the link, guys, if you just go to the comments, starhansen.com/podcast. There's actually awesome resources on there, including why the F am I still not organized? Sorry, I hope they don't cut it out on YouTube for that, for cursing. But yeah, it's a really great read. And again, Star's work is like so incredible. It's just, I'm so grateful to have met you and work with you and to continue to support your work. And yeah, but I would love to see if there's anything else that you want to share with our audience before we get on going for today.
I think the biggest thing that, if you want to take just one thing away from today, it's to choose curiosity over judgment. Judgment is our default state when it comes to our clutter. And if you can just have 1 minute of curiosity, and look, I am not a fan when my therapist is like, why don't you sit and write for 20 minutes? I'm like, absolutely not. No, thank you. I think that feels like forever. When we're in our trauma state, even 20 minutes can feel like forever. Can you do something for 1 minute? Can you think for 30 seconds? Like, can you just be open? Like, okay, clutter, do you have anything to tell me? And just sit there for 30 seconds. It does not have to be big. What it just is, it's the way that we abandon ourselves in our life over and over again, and that we have abandoned ourselves or been abandoned by other people. Something as simple as showing up with curiosity can be so healing. And it's, again, not easy, but it's simple. And hopefully it can help you to start to open the door to what your clutter is trying to do for you.
Thank you. The baby steps are always the ones that are the most powerful and impactful if taken over time.
Agreed. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me on today, Kara. It's always so good to talk to you.
Yes. Thank you so much again. And again, you guys, you can get tickets to the New Visions Holistic Expo. We do have channeling immersion tickets. Those have to be pre-purchased ahead of time. You can get them at newvisionsholisticexpo.com. And if you're like, where do I find all these other speakers? You can just go to the speakers page on that website, and Star's recording here is going to be up right away, as well as our other speakers coming up. Next week, we are bringing on Abiola Abrams, Hay House author. So we're bringing her on next week. And so some other surprise people. So we're just really excited to have all these incredible souls, again, supporting this new paradigm, this new earth, as some of us call it, and really bringing these tools and tools for the mind, body, and spirit for us to really live in more aligned way with ourselves and the world. So thank you again for listening, everyone. And thanks for being here, Star.
Thank you.
And be well till next time, my friends. Bye. Thank you for listening to the Mind Body Detox Podcast. If you love this podcast, share it with others and leave us a review. Your reviews help us more than you know and supports us continuing to make episodes and being heard from all over the world. You can also follow the link in our show notes to submit a topic that you would like to hear on the show. Thank you so much.